Hi, my name is Bishop Lafer, and this is my screencast for the Week 2 Development in Advanced Server-Side Languages. I've chosen to make a task manager application using a PHP framework called CodeIgniter. For week 2 development, I've accomplished the login and logout features. So I've built a table or a database with two tables in it, a users table and a user type table so far. In the users table, I have fields for ID, username, password, and type ID currently. I'm going to add more fields to complete the user information, including email address, first and last name, that kind of thing. I just wanted to get the functionality of the login working for the time being. So right now I only have one row, and that is one user's username is Stan and the password is MD5 hash of the word password. In the code, I'm accomplishing this using, well, here, let's look at it first. So go to login, username is Stan, password is just password. Go to login, task, welcome Stan, you've been successfully logged in. And then if I click log out, I exit. So also though, if I'm logged in, say this URL, because this is the specific members area, I'll log out. So I'm not logged in now. I try to go back to that URL and it doesn't let me, it just shoots me back to the login. And I'm accomplishing that using CodeIgniter sessions, which is actually stored in a cookie, which is this right here. So if I delete this, also if I am logged in and I delete this cookie and then refresh, it'll also shoot me back to the login. So I'm actually accomplishing this using a couple different controllers and views with just one model so far, which is the user model. I'm templating for each page. I'm actually using a template. So I've got in my views folder, I've got this includes folder with a header, which is where I've put a title. I could do this dynamically using PHP, but I think the title is just going to stay the same for all the pages. I'm using a Google font for the headings, and then this is Bootstrap, and then just custom CSS changes that I've made in the header. And then in the footer, I've got my footer class that'll be at the bottom of every page, and then a link to jQuery and Bootstrap's JavaScript for functionality for next week once I've built the actual create a task and then view tasks and complete tasks. The CRUD functionality is next week. And then the template that actually puts it all together is I load a view and then I pass in a variable that says what the body's going to be. So for login form, I'm using a controller login. First I construct the controller, and then the first function of the index function is I set this main content equal to login form, which is my view login form.php. So then I load the model, user model, and then I'm validating, but that's actually when I'm logging in. So when I first arrive though, I construct and then I send my user to this view template, and then I pass it this variable, which tells the template what to fill that middle div with, or middle section with, this here, this middle view. So I have the header view, the footer view, and then this view is dynamically changed. And then this is the login form. It's just a div class, a container, and then I got an ID, a strong title, and that's how I styled my header. So strong title here, I just changed the color. And then for H1s and H2s, I'm using that Google font, and then I've got a little text shadow underneath it just to give it a little bit of a nicer look. So when you come to login, you fill out the form. It's using the login controller. So to validate the credentials, I'm loading a model, and then I'm calling a method within that model, the model being userModel.php. So to validate the user exists, I'm going setting up a query select from the database where username is equal to the input from the form, the login form, and where password is equal to the input from, or the MD5 hash of the input of the password field in this login form, which is, I'm just using PHP to generate the fields. I'm gonna have to change that. I've been looking and I found a library that will allow you to use PHP and CodeIgniter to actually generate Bootstrap styled forms, but it almost seems like it's more intense to try and learn that than it is to just type out hard code the form for the creating a task. So I think I might just hard code that, and rather than having PHP generate the form, I'm just going to hard code the tasks form, but that'll be inside the members area. So I'm validating, I'm selecting where the username is equal to username and password is equal to the MD5 hash of the password that the user submitted in the form, and then I'm setting the query equal to, or setting that query equal to a variable called query. So I should be, if that user validates, then it will return one row. So if this query that I just said is equal to a select all from my users table where the username is equal to the username input and the password is equal to the MD5 hash of the user input in the form, it will return one row. If it does, then return true. If not, return false. And then in the login controller here, if query is equal to, if they do validate basically, so in this login controller the variable query is equal to the method validate within the user model, and I'm saying if that query exists, if that's true, then set data equal to array, or set the variable data equal to array, and pass it the information, the username that's stored, and then also the is logged in key, which is a boolean, and pass it the value of true, and then create a session and set the user data equal to this data variable that I just created, which is the username and the is logged in of true, and then redirect to the site controller in the members area view when logged in. If not, if this query is false, so if the user's credentials don't validate or there is no session, then just go back to index, which will reload this. Just reload the login form again. So if the user does validate, then we come into the site controller, and I'm saying public function members area is I'm setting a variable of user equal to this. I'm taking the username out of the session that I just set in the login. So when I logged in, I set the username in this session equal to the user's input, which I know is also equal to, there is that user exists in the database, and so it's just the username, and so I'm setting that username equal to a variable user so that I can dynamically change that on the members area page here. So welcome, and then it says, echoes the username, you have been successfully logged in, and then there's a link to log out. So is logged in, I'm checking here, is the variable is logged in is equal to the session, that key that I just set in the session, is logged in is equal to true. So if is not is set, right? So if is set is not true, is logged in. If it's not in, then it'll redirect to the login controller and ask you to log in. Or if that key is logged in is not equal to true, then it'll redirect you to the login controller. So that's how it knows if you're logged in or not, whether or not you have access to the members area. And so then here, user, this session, user data, username, or user, the variable user is equal to that username I'm pulling from the session. And then I'm setting the key in the data array, I'm setting the key user equal to that variable user that I just defined as the username I'm pulling out of the session. And then the main content, which is that the the second view in the template is equal to the members area. So it'll call the members area view rather than the login form view if you are successfully logged in. And then if you log out, I have a controller to log out, which I guess I could have put this in the site controller, but instead I just made it its own. And I'm accomplishing logging out by destroying the session. So if I destroy the session, before I was just changing that key is logged in the session to false, and that would kick out, but then I did some research and I think it's better and more effective if I destroy the session and then redirect back to the login page. So that's where I'm at now. Next week here, instead of just having this you've been successfully logged in and log out anchor, I'm going to add this is where the tasks will be able to be edited or created and edited if you are a user with a type of manager. So that's back over here. So I've got this users table with a content type ID of 1, and I've got this users type table with user type ID of 1 or 2, 1 being manager, 2 being team member. So if you're a manager, and I've also got this relation so they're related, so you can tell what type of user each individual entry is or each individual row is. So if you are a manager type, then you'll be able to add and edit tasks. If you're not, you'll just be able to see the list of tasks that are available and then select one and complete it. And if you complete it, then it will send an email, but I won't have the email done by next week per se. I'm only planning on having the CRUD functionality. So if you are differentiating between users types and then displaying relevant information to that user. So if you're a manager, you'll be able to create or edit tasks, and if you're a team member, you'll just be able to see the available tasks and then complete them. So I think that's about it for this week. Thank you very much. Have a great day. For my PRD, when I made it in week 1, I left off an entire week in my schedule. And so for this week, I just did the login, and next week I'm going to do the CRUD. And then for week 3, we'll have email notifications. So I wasn't really clear on how accurate my time schedule would be because I didn't really know anything about CodeIgniter or even what I was going to have it look like so much because I had never used CodeIgniter and I wasn't sure how I'd be able to style it. So, oops. I'm not quite, my PRD is a little off. Like I said, I'm missing a week, and it doesn't look exactly like my wireframes. Those are really low fidelity, just kind of get it onto paper. But so yeah, for week 1 I accomplished login. For week 2 I'm going to accomplish CRUD, and then for week 3 I will have email notifications as well.